Welcome to the yard, guys. This is Dave with Grim Games again. We got a new bucket hat, and I'm very excited about it. Today, I want to talk about OP-04 leaders, and we're just going to do a quick tier list. I know there are a ton of these online. Mine aren't going to line up with theirs, and my opinions on these leaders might not line up with yours. That is a-okay. We all have different experiences with these leaders. It's fine. So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to do the order that we've got here. There are some that we can just slam into D tier. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and get those out of the way. Shanks, Sakabozo, uh, Uta, unfortunately, but unironically enough, I'm going to put Uta at the top of the D tier. Sorry, Iceberg, we had hope for you, but you're probably the worst leader in the game. And I'm going to throw Vivi in here as well. I'm going to put her at the top though because well, okay, this will be the first leader I spent some time on. She's going to go into C tier, or CU at the winner box, because just the fact that you get two card pools to work with, you're at 5 life, and honestly, being able to search out Gum Gum Red Rock with Nami is kind of insane. But she's not going to be very high in C tier. Not going to hold you. I think these are the only 4 leaders that I can confidently place here without thinking about it. The rest of them I'm going to go through and we are going to think about. So Black Yellow Big Mom, she's going to go above Vivi in the See You at the Winner Box tier. She got one new card in the Vivi blocker from the new Luffy starter deck, but again, she's just a little bit too slow, and the cost to do her leader ability is just this much too much. I think if she was just a Dawn times 2 when attacking, you got to do it, that'd be a lot better because then you could still play things and do her leader ability. But the way her leader ability is now, you can't play anything that's impactful enough to make a difference and do her leader ability to keep you alive. Zoro, we all knew that this was going to end up here. Red is always going to be good. I don't think there's going to be a point in the game's history where Red is at least not going to be playable. Again, we're going to put Law up here. I think just in terms of power, these two are very interchangeable because they do hypothetically the same thing, right? I think Law can accrue a few more resources than Zoro, but they're just really aggressive, low to the ground leaders, and they're all good. I had such high hopes for Red Green Luffy, and the only reason he is at the See You at the Winner Box tier is because he is in Red Green, and those card pools are absolutely ridiculous. Odin, I think you can do some cute things with him, but I don't think you can actually go into a tournament with his leader, because if anyone knows what this deck does and can play around it, then it's really just not that great. Blue Dofi, this is going to be a hot take and kind of based off personal experience because I love this deck. Preface, I love this leader, but we are going to throw him straight into See You at the Winner Box tier. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, right? Hopefully this will keep you in the video, but I just think the decks apply too much pressure now for this leader to be relevant, and there's never going to be a turn where you get to do his leader ability and the dude that you play off his leader ability gets to stick, right? So in the early game, you just clear all of his dudes like you would previously, but now there's so much removal and there's so much hate for the board that there's never going to be a turn where you've got more than 1 or 2 dudes on the board, and this deck can't really play unless you've got overwhelming board advantage. So I think that this deck is not good right now. I'm sorry about it. Blurple Kaido, I think people are on the hype train for this deck. It's okay. It's a little better with Who's Who. If this deck high rolls just like any other purple deck that you'll see that can play Onigashima, if it high rolls Onigashima and then just gets to play on its high curve the whole game, then it's really scary. But those are big ifs. Blurple Croc, again, just more hype. I don't think he's very good still. You can't play with as little cards as this deck has to in hand. It's a miracle, and we're just gonna go and talk about it. Queen is gonna be my first B tier deck. These two decks are very similar in that they function with little cards in hand. This deck just somehow magically does it better. I don't know how it I can't tell you how it works, but it just does. Somehow the Queen deck always manages to have perfect life. They always manage to have removal in hand. They always manage to have red rock, and they've literally got like two cards at their disposal in their hand. It's absolutely disgusting how this deck does what it does. I hate this deck. I'm gonna tell you now, I hate this deck. I think it is one of the worst decks in the game. But like, it's good, which sucks. King. This is going to be a hot topic and a hot take. I'm going to put this like in C tier. Now, on the basis, this is the basis that it just got top 32 in an event. You could very easily just throw it down here where it usually is on most tier lists, right? But I have to give the credit where the credit is due. Yes, this King player probably just like high rolled the whole day. But if you play against people that disrespect purple and just like let purple play the game, then it is kind of hard to beat, especially if they do see their Onigashima and they do get to high roll their curve. So I am going to put him in the C tier above these two decks just because, on principle, purple is a good color if it's left unchecked. Whitebeard, we all knew Whitebeard would be good. Honestly, I think Whitebeard is better than both of these decks, not because of any other reason than you have to think less to play this deck than you do these two decks, which is saying something because like you don't have to think very hard to play Zora, but you don't have to think very hard to play Whitebeard like at all, which is why I'm putting it like here. Garp, I want to put you here. I really want to put Garp in the C tier, but in good conscience, like I think I think I have to put it again, just like right here along with these guys, because it's red and black has never been a color combination that works well together anyway. So like this leader was not built for success, but it does get to do cute things, and you can catch people off guard, which is a huge point of contention when talking about how good or bad this leader is. So I'm gonna slap him in the C with the Winnabox tier. Now, Kinemon. I'm going to tell you now, and look in the camera when I say this. I'm going to tell you now that I have a personal attachment to this deck. I love this deck. This is the first deck I played in OP-02. I think this deck is still really good, and it's going to go in the B tier. Like, it's probably going to end up at the bottom of these B tier after I get through all of these decks. But I think just the addition of the 10-drop Dofi gives green decks a chance because that card is absolutely spectacular, and I think the strongest turn one play in the game is still turn one Okiku with Kinemon. It's just so good. So you have to respect that, right? I think you have to respect the fact that Kinemon can just like put really good bodies on the board for cheaper, and the amount of tempo you get from playing a turn one Okiku, and then if you got it, turn two Okiku is just insane. So this is going to end up towards the bottom of B tier, but it is going to land in B tier. Sanji, I love this leader a lot, and they got a lot with Red Rock, but I don't think you can play this leader when there are just other decks that do what this leader does, but better. Like, there are other decks that play vanillas and just somehow magically get more tempo because they can do better things with their leader ability. And then you've got Green Purple Dofi, which is going to go straight up to super good tier, since I mentioned it. But yeah, you've got this leader that does what this leader does, just better. So yeah, I can't put Sanji, unfortunately, because I love this leader. Again, I adore this leader, but like I can't put him in higher than D tier. Ivankov, you have just kind of fallen off. I don't think you can win a game with Ivankov anymore unless your opponent just has no idea what it does. If your opponent's got no idea what it does, then you stand a chance. But like even then, it's pretty hard just because what this deck does now is not enough, I don't think. Magellan, I think Magellan is objectively the best purple leader right now. So he's going to go in the B tier. He will go above Kinemon because, like I said, this deck actually low-key cooks. So, yeah, we're going to put it there. Z. I'm going to put Z above Garp, but lower than these leaders. Again, I just think there are too many moving parts to Z, and this deck was 10-drop or bust before, but is definitely 10-drop or bust now. Like, you have to drop the 10-drop Kuzan in order for this deck to function. And I think having to rely on something like that isn't like conducive to a winning strategy, especially if you're thinking about taking it into a large event. So I would definitely take this at a win a box where it's like 3 or 4 rounds just to like mess around and have some fun. But I don't think I could like see this winning or topping an event, to be honest. Smoker. I think Smoker has reclaimed his place as the best black leader, well, apart from Rebecca, and we'll talk about her in a minute. But I'm going to put him in B tier below Magellan because I just don't think he's better than Magellan. Ace, you're a red deck, so like by default you get to at least C tier. And I do think Ace is better than Dofi. Again, it's a red deck. The card pool is just better, and you get a lot of tools that a lot of decks don't have, aka Flame Emperor. Like that card is absolutely bonkers. Kuro, I've got a friend that plays Kuro. One of my best buddies. We test a lot with his deck, and this deck is actually like insane. But there are two qualifiers. One, you've got to draw like decent in all of your games, and two, you have to know how to play the leader. Like you can't just like pick this deck up and play it. You've got to know when you're supposed to go for their board and when you're supposed to go for their face, because this is actually a very aggressive leader when played correctly. I have to put this in C tier, but I'm going to put it right above or right below Dofi, just because this deck again has just a bunch of moving parts to it. Arlong, again, we'll put that like at the top of the C tier. It's just all right. Like you get to play very aggressively, which is good, but you know, it is what it is. It just can't keep up really, and having 4 life is a real detriment. Nami, I hate this deck, but it's good. Like it's decent. It can definitely sneak games. If you play against anybody that knows how to beat this leader, you're not going to win the game. But like it's decent at what it does. And Nami is just one of those decks where if you high roll it and you just draw perfect all day, then you probably won't drop a game. And it's unfortunate to say that for a deck like this, but you know, it is what it is. Katakuri, boop. Do I think it's better than these red decks? Unfortunately, no. But it keeps the reason Katakuri gets to go up here is because it keeps literally everything below it in check. So like all these other decks, literally all these other decks. Make sure I'm not gonna overstate my claim here. Yeah, pretty much all these other decks down here don't really get to play against Katakuri. And like most of the decks that I put underneath here as well can't really play against Katakuri for the sheer fact that the 10 drop exists. Like most of the decks down here, they have to drag the game out a little bit longer. And the longer the game gets dragged out, the more possibilities you have to 10 drop and the more possibilities you have to get 10 drop multiple times in a game. And just the sheer fact that you get to do that is like makes this leader really good. Isho, I think Isho is a hidden gem in this format. I really do. And that's why I'm going to slap it above Smoker. Actually, no. I can't do that in good conscience just because I do still think Smoker is the best black leader. But this card has so much potential for removal in every phase of the game that you can't ignore it. Having green and black in your card pools is a little awkward because green like has next to nothing that reduces cost. But getting to play the black cards for removal and getting to like rest things with the green stuff and getting to like just play the value and tempo cards that green gets to play makes this deck a threat. Like if you've got good gameplay and you know how to play the game well, this leader is actually high key really, really good. Rebecca's going to be the first leader that goes into the A tier because I cannot justify putting this card into S tier when it loses against so many of the other decks. So the problem with Rebecca, and I say this because I'm not smart enough to play Rebecca, is that you have to be incredibly intelligent to play Rebecca. Now, the upside to Rebecca is that it hoses these two decks. The downside to Rebecca is that it hard loses to like any form of yellow. I think it's got a really hard matchup against Queen, but it's not unwinnable. The Katakuri matchup, not going to hold you, feels unwinnable unless you play it in a very specific way. But this deck is very strong. It's going to be very popular because it is a like very consistent controlled strategy. Like you're trying to pretty much build almost the exact same board every game, and you're trying to control what your opponent does. I think the deck is strong, but I don't see it winning a major event over here. Not gonna lie. Yerpul Croc. This deck is like my pet deck for this format, and I am going to slap it in the B tier, in like top of the B tier, because this deck cooks. Like if you let this deck get to the late game, it is very, very hard to kill, and it's got one of the few like mechanics in the game that lets you cycle for free in the 8-drop Croc that we've got. For those of you who don't know what that card does, it's a Don -1 when your opponent attacks. You draw a card, discard a card. Cool, right? Excuse me. But on the turn that you have 8 Don, if you go second, you can play that card and be able to hold up Blast Breath. So you play that card, heal, and then you get Blast Breath up whenever your opponent swings. That's incredibly strong because then you stick a 9k body that gets to do something every turn, or every turn on your opponent's turn, and you get to live. So it's incredibly powerful. I think people are sleeping on this deck. I don't know if it could last 9 to 10 rounds in a larger event, but I do think that there's hidden potential in this deck for sure. This is a red deck. I think it's a little bit better than Ace. Everybody waits until the end of a format to try and play this leader. And I think the sheer fact that Whitebeard is probably still the best deck gives this leader a chance to shine later. So this is where it's going to be. Kid, if you guys watched my previous video about Kid, I think this deck is absolutely insane. I'm actually going to put it above Rebecca because of the sheer amount of pressure it puts on literally every deck on this list. Being able to play 2 to 3 dudes a turn and threaten your leader swing makes like shooting for game at the end of it like a lot easier. And you can just like put so much pressure on your opponent that they have to respond to your board, or they're just going to get overwhelmed. Now, again, it suffers the same problem that every deck underneath Katakuri does, in that the Katakuri matchup is tough. Like the yellow matchup is just hard. But I do think it is a contender for one of the better decks in the format. Like it's almost S tier for me, to be honest, but I'll leave it at A where it belongs. Blue Crocodile, another deck that belongs in A tier. I don't think it's quite the caliber of deck that these 5 are, but I do think it does stand a chance and plays against most of the other decks very, very well. The Rebecca matchup feels really, really good just because you can keep their board as clean as they can keep your board. So, like, it's kind of a battle of attrition, but you win it a little bit because you can go wider than them. So I think this leader is very, very good, especially in the hands of someone who knows how to play it. Like, it's incredible. Purple Kaido, unfortunately, you have just, like, fallen far to the wayside. I'm going to put you right below Z, I think. Because, like, the thing with this is that it suffers the same thing that the other the other Animal Kingdom decks on this list suffer from, in that if you don't see Onigashima, your game is just really, really hard. And without a reliable way to search Onigashima that the Blurple Kaido has, it's just harder for you. Yes, you can still sneak game and you still got like all the tools that you had before, but those tools just are not enough anymore in this meta. So I love this deck. This is the first deck I ever tried to like actually play competitively, and yeah, it hurts me that purple has just gotten like no love in the past few sets, but it is what it is. On the sheer premise of being a yellow deck, this Big Mom gets to go in this tier. Now, the reason it's not in the same tier as this yellow deck is because this yellow deck is just slower. Your game plan is a lot different. Like, your game plan is more control-y with this leader than this one. This one is fairly Katakuri is fairly easy to play, whereas this one you've got to like actually set up your life. You've got to think about when you are going to let them hit you versus when you're not. There are a lot more moving parts to this one. So yeah, that's why Big Mom is down here. Black Luffy. This is a point of contention. I think this deck cooks. This is right. I think this is right below Smoker for contender for best black leader in the format. Apart from Rebecca. Rebecca's the exception because she is like, if you consider her a black leader, then she is the best black leader in the format. But I think this card is actually insane. The fact that you're playing a lot of stuff that allows you to KO more than once in the turn means that instead of just swinging 5 with your leader, you get to swing like 7, 9. You get to do much taller swings with your leader. And over time, across the course of a game, that adds up. And it's still got the same board presence and the same removal that black does. So like it has removal to get you through the mid game, so you can get to the late game, stick your 10 drop, and then if you get to like 10 drop with Isho next to it, your opponent literally can't play anything without it dying. So you put them in a very precarious position where if they can't go wide enough, then they just can't do anything. And sometimes even if they go wide enough, they're not able to do anything. So I think this leader is very, very good. Last but not least, Yamato. Again, being a yellow leader, you get to have the good yellow cards, but not having access to Big Mom hurts you a lot. Um, Unfortunately, I think this is the worst of the yellow leaders, and I'm going to put it like uh, right here at the top of C tier. Um, there's just the sheer fact that it's a yellow deck means that you get to play the good yellow cards, but you don't get to play the best yellow card in 10 drop Big Mom. So yeah, it can't. I don't think you can go any higher than this, unfortunately. So yeah, this is my tier list. I do still think Whitebeard is the best deck. It's definitely not objective. I think any of these 5 decks, and honestly any of these 8 decks up here, I could see going very far in an event and doing very, very well. Obviously Zoro won the Knoxville Regional. We've seen a lot of these three still. Like the meta is shifting more towards these control decks because these control decks now have the tools to keep these decks in check. But when our player base and our player field is still primarily playing just these three, I'm going to throw this leader in there, 4 decks, then it's really hard for any of these other decks to get representation. So you have to keep that in mind as well when you're looking at tournament results. Like a lot of tournaments do just have these 3 leaders everywhere in the pool because they've seen results before. And not a lot of people are wanting to take the time to learn these other cool leaders. Like any of the characters in B tier, they can also do incredibly well at a tournament. I think some of these C tier leaders have done well. Like people are still trying to play this deck, and I understand why, but I also don't, because like it just isn't as good as these other blue decks. So yeah, those are my thoughts on OP-04 and where the game is at right now. I think the game is honestly in a very healthy place. Some might disagree and say, "Oh, red's still the best color." And admittedly, red probably is still the best color, but the other colors are getting tools to take care of red. So I think we're reaching a healthier point, and I think where the game is at right now is pretty good. So share your thoughts with me in the comments. We'll talk about it, and yeah, have a great day, guys.